Hey, I'm Aloy, aka the Ginger Khaleesi, aka the Red Hot Blooded Habanero, and welcome to the year 3041, where Siri is now a goddess who turned Earth into Jurassic World because she's a simp for Chris Pratt. Despite the occasional orphan getting crushed by a 30-foot robot T-Rex, life was actually peaceful, until Siri aka Gaia self-destructed and left these animatronics on their default setting, hostile to mankind. I thought we learned our mistake from the bite of 83. On top of that, a new COVID variant started spreading across the land. Luckily, I was a clone of the only CEO who didn't act out of self-interest, so it was in my genetic code to save the world. However, another thing in my genetic code was masochism, so I left behind all my weapons from the first game and followed the virus with nothing but my handy dandy spear, and this one clingy guy from back home.
You're stuck with me now. Like bark on wood.
The only thing harder than his wood was going to be this journey, which I dubbed Can You Beat Horizon Forbidden West Spear Only. Not even 2 minutes in, we were presented with an obstacle that could fail this challenge. The classic video game ladder with a lock that needed to be shot to drop it lower. In denial, I spent 15 minutes whacking the lock. I even jumped off a nearby car, but no matter what I did, it wouldn't open. That lock was tighter than Mrs. Incredible's supersuit. And just like me thinking about it, this challenge didn't last long. I was forced to whip out the bow that I mentally disowned in pursuit of this challenge, and I shot an arrow with so little enthusiasm that even Goobia Goobian would seem like a ball of sunshine. But like his baseball team, that's when it hit me. I would come up with a rule that states, I am allowed to use the bow only to clear obstacles in the story that don't damage enemies. Or, in layman's terms, I had no f***ing choice. Shortly afterwards, I ran into my first machine, which I call Mike Wazowski. I played an Uno reverse card, scared him for once, learned the benefits of stealth and the consequences of failing it. After being acquainted with the game's mechanics, I was handsomely rewarded with another tool that forced me to use my bow, an action that would make my PP grow smaller with guilt. But after realizing I could use this tool as a grappling hook, my inner Batman growled, and my PP grew bigger again. With this sudden surge of testosterone, I clapped this Robodog's cheeks and performed my first critical strike, a move that would be really useful for the rest of this challenge. I used up my remaining toxic masculinity and continued to look for a backup of Gaia, the goddess AI. Unfortunately, there were simps in my way. I blew their minds with my knowledge of astrophysics, but this simp refused to let his tier 3 sub go to waste. And so began my first spear-only boss fight. I quickly learned that this wasn't going to be a walk in the park. This simp had the ability to throw his ass in a circle and spit racial slurs at me. An eye for an eye makes the world go round, so I retaliated. But my PP was too small to reach him. I got roasted by people in the YouTube comments and would slowly burn away from the humiliation. But the motto for this challenge is against all odds for a reason. So I set my heart ablaze, dodged his ass, and mollywopped it. That's when I remembered that he was just a machine and I was the descendant of his creators. His programming allowed him to do only a finite number of moves. If I ran around at this specific spot, I could trigger his tail whip attack, and I had a brief window to come at his neck. So like a Jawa on Tatooine, I continued deconstructing him. Eventually, he would collapse from the force of my blows, and I used this opportunity to shove my 4GB RAM stick into his memory socket. Stunned at what it just did to him, he clenched harder onto his pedestal like one of my nephews on his mom's leg. I could smell his power supply about to fail, because his moves became even more predictable. After bullying him for another minute, the nerd finally came out of his safe space. But not gonna lie, I was shocked at how toxic he could be. I ran around eating every medicinal berry in sight while I downloaded his new moveset. I came to the conclusion that I just had to run the Windows command YOLO.exe and laid it onto him extra thick. I rocked him so hard that I accidentally fossilized him. I whipped my spaghetti hair back and forth and proceeded to the data center for Gaia's backup, just to be greeted by a douchebag version of Jeff Bezos. I was debated, but I located the man with the answers who I once hated.
So once your anger at my entirely necessary deception has faded, now why don't you come out here and find me in the Forbidden West?
While I made my preparations, the game thought it would be cute to tell me the melee controls right after I fought a whole ass boss. However, I was grateful because I didn't know I could perform a power attack, the bread and butter of this playthrough. I told my friend Varl that we'd leave in the morning. I ditched him, rode along the sun-kissed rocks of the canyons, the wavy dunes of the desert, and the snow-capped mountains. I even took this lift that had one of the most beautiful views in the game. Sadly, I was greeted by the Chinese bootleg version of the annoying orange. I learned this skill named Resonator Blast that puts a blue circle on an enemy I hit with my spear, and if I shoot the circle with my bow, it'll do big damage.
Oh, that's a lot of damage!
I would never use this skill, but now I can buy this new Nora combo for my spear. After a
fat nut,
I ran into my old friend MC Hammer, who suddenly got attacked by Mecha Pumbaa. I Hakuna'd his Matatas and asked Erend if he'd smash or pass Nala. He said pass, so I left him because I wouldn't have been able to tolerate this type of ignorance on my team. I bought the Block Breaker skill to break these social constructs, this new armor to increase my critical strike and power attack damage, and the Nora Legacy Spear to flex my pre-order drip. Then, I tried to pull a Sasuke and leave the village, but the power of bonds and friendship was too strong because my friends found me again. We continued moving west when we ran into some Crips who blocked our path, until a rival gang equipped with the newest Tesla lineup performed a drive-by on us. I hotwired their Teslas and showed them how we handled things on the East Coast. Meanwhile, one guy got nipple piercings as another guy was disarmed. A couple of Mecha Pumbas came out of nowhere, but I struck them where the sun doesn't shine. This other guy thought he was an Assassin's Creed protagonist with his Uplay reward, but I finessed him so elegantly that this tree had to censor it for being almost erotic. Now I had a paraglider. Along with upgraded power attack damage, I was ready to survive these West Coast streets. I even found this Ram, and since we were in the West, I named him Odell Beckham Jr. of the LA Rams. I found another facility that was rumored to have a Gaia backup, and like Snoop Dogg, I lit up this weed. After some tomb raiding, I found the heart of this facility and was forced to use my bow to uncouple some machinery. Finally, I found the Gaia backup, but I was interrupted by some Star Trek cosplayers. And that's not all. One of them looked just like me. This was like the Spider-Man clone saga all over again. They sent their alpha male Eric to dispose of me. He whipped out his Halo energy sword and his ki blasts, but all I needed was a few dozen arrows to show him how it looks when your balls drop. It was breathtaking. I woke up with a couple broken ribs in a village who praised the machine as their land god. She was in pain, so I removed a splinter the size of a YouTuber's ego to make her feel better. Then, I walked in on Varl canoodling with this girl named Zoe. I gave them some privacy when all of a sudden some cock block machines attacked in the distance. I raced Zoe over there, but I was too top heavy, so she won. But when it came down to who could take out the most Robo-Raptors, I won. Nothing that some good old power attacks and critical strikes couldn't fix. We found a sacred cave, and of course my beautiful spear knew the answer to the door's secret question.
What comes first, the cereal or the milk?
Cereal. And if you chose milk, then you're a psychopath who had some sort of traumatic childhood experience, and for the sake of society you should honestly just kill.
Behind the door were some kangaroo jacks who kicked me in the chest so hard that I went down a few cup sizes. I got up, milked them, and used my bow to solve a lot of platforming puzzles. When we reached the heart of the cauldron, we saw the land god from the village being turned into a weapon by an AI called Hephaestus. Sadly, you know what I had to do. That's right. I rammed my 7th generation Intel Core processor straight into her motherboard. And if you think that was bad, then you're not ready to know what I did to Hephaestus. Let's just say my YouTube ads aren't the only thing that's long. All that juicy spear usage allowed me to increase my melee damage, and then it was onto a facility where we can plug in the Gaia backup. Some typing here, some clicking there, and bada bing bada boom, Gaia was finally reborn. She told me that in order to cease this new COVID variant and bring peace to the world, she would need the capabilities of her subordinate AIs, Poseidon, Demeter, and Ether, aka water, earth, and air. Then she would become an avatar capable of procuring Hephaestus, the final AI needed to prevent extinction of life on Earth. Since she was already dressed like an airbender, it was only right that I went for Ether first. I met the Toucan Sam variant of Betty White who told me that she'd bring me to Ether only if I helped him fight a rival gang. Remember that guy who was disarmed? His name is Katalo, and he was here to give me a hand. After we armed ourselves, we charged in the name of Clan Fruit Loop. The enemies fell fast, but then we crossed paths with Melvin, the elephant from Clan Cocoa Krispies. His cereal was so fire that I would fall into a food coma after just one serving. He even had dispensers on his back that delivered this serving so fast that it was hard to predict. Even when I did manage to get close enough to give him a love tap, he would instantly drop those 7-ton ass cheeks on me. After some careful consideration, I decided to do some side missions that I've been ignoring since the beginning of this journey. I cleared a mine of some stray dogs, showed some Mecha Poombas the circle of life, and toppled over a Blastoise. I was feeling a lot stronger. I got this Valor Surge that increases my melee damage for a short amount of time. I even increased my critical strike damage, my medicinal berry healing, and my medicinal berry gathering. I was a new girl. I would slide into Melvin's cheeks, perform an Achilles tenotomy, roll, charge, and clap his right cheek. Then I would slide cancel until this detection meter turned yellow so I could repeat the process. I tenderized this elephant meat so well that even Gordon Ramsay was impressed with my service. Eventually, Melvin was vanquished and the victor of the battle was Clan Fruit Loop. For celebration, I was forced to use this plasma cannon to vandalize the fort of another gang. Then, I was given skill points which I spent on stealth just in case I ever had to deal with someone like Melvin again. On my way back to Ether, I ran into a polar bear, but after some successful dodging, I hit him with my thunderclap and flash. I returned to just in time to see some Fruit Loops tussle with machines, but then the Fire Nation attacked. A cutscene put a turret in my hands without my consent, so I instantly threw it away like it was infested with cooties. I tried dropping below to help fight close range, but I was confined behind these invisible walls. I had no choice but to stay up here and provide moral support for the gunners. The enemies' health started off like this and then ended up like this after some time, so the gunners were definitely doing damage. But after sitting behind this barricade and watching an entire episode of Seinfeld, I realized that after a certain point, the machines stopped taking damage. Again, I was forced to use something besides my spear, but this time it actually dealt damage to an enemy, a violation of my rule. Therefore, this was an unavoidable fail to the challenge. I projected my frustrations onto these machines, and then I ran into an old friend, the simp from the beginning of the journey. Not only was I a new girl, but I was a new girl with friends.
Get to the weapon! If I can draw that thing close, open fire!
Occasionally, a Fruit Loop would shoot the ballista and stun the simp, giving me a chance to use my Valor Surge and land some critical strikes. Then, I would charge my spear and continue discombobulating him. I stole his RTX 3090 and downloaded the Ether AI. I gave thanks to Katalo and recruited him for my own personal army. Then, I bought this underrated skill that decreases the damage I take by 50% when my health gets low. I defeated this Robo Rhino using my stealth attack method, upgraded my stealth tree some more, and snuck up on my friends listening to something sussy-wussy. I updated Gaia using the Ether AI, turning her into an airbender when all of a sudden we heard a disturbance on the roof. It was some frickin' LARPers making all this noise. On the bright side, these two guys accidentally hit a girl with a frisbee, leading to the end of the roleplay. Me and the girl made some snow angels, then we stumbled upon an Amazon fulfillment center. I opened one of the packages and was shocked to find a clone of myself. I was just about to sue Jeff Bezos for profiting off my likeness when I was attacked by his tentacle monsters. I took a pic with the tentacles from my OnlyFans, stole the clone, and stole a piece of the frisbee from earlier. I had to make up for all the money I missed out on somehow, you know? I tried to be friendly with my clone when this beta started flexing all of her college degrees. Me, being the alpha clone, told that nerd that if she's so smart, then think of a way to save the world. Meanwhile, I'll be heading to the next AI, Poseidon. Ironically, Poseidon was in a Las Vegas desert drier than my DMs, until I ran into this guy, Moreland, who spoke my language.
Machine kneecap, maybe?
Well, you'd need a filter.
Synthetic membrane would do it. With a hose to a compressed
air capsule, hammer and tongs.
What is this? What is happening here?
I was moist, especially when he made this special diving mask just for me. With it, I was able to explore an ancient casino that was drowning in debt. The amount of debt was so unbelievable that it was able to manifest the Loch Ness monster. I activated some pump nodes to drain the city and tried to pet the Loch Ness monster, but she squirted all over me. I did not appreciate this mythical juice that I was covered in, so I brought an end to this overglorified eel. I showed her who the true queen of the ocean was, and later I found my king, Poseidon. Back on the surface, I watched Mushu dance, made some postcards, and turned Gaia into a waterbender. We just needed one more AI. Demeter. Luckily, the tree huggers that defended this place were welcoming. I met this girl named Alva who led this conservation group and wanted to save the earth just like me. We were having fun exploring these overgrown ruins when we were attacked by Batman. His crazy ass thought we were working for Poison Ivy, so he hit us with all types of gadgets. Explosive grenades, frost grenades, poison gas, plasma mines, invisibility. Like, what the hell happened to Batman's no-kill policy? As you can imagine, this was tough to do spear only because of the fact that he can fly. Luckily, he did land pretty regularly, but he has this move that has really stupid range and was the main reason for me using up my medicinal berries and dying. Thankfully, there were a good amount of medicinal berries in the arena, and because of this plant forager skill I got, I was able to get more heals per plant. Plus, I had Alva with me who actually did a good amount of damage to Batman over time. But this move, man, I hated it. It made it so hard to get a hit and back up without taking damage. And in the later stages of the fight, he would pollute the earth with so much gas and mines, which would punish me even more for trying to do damage. There was just so much BS that can hit you and add up to your inevitable death. Like, it got to the point where you kinda had to accept the fact that you were going to get hit, but you just had to deal as much damage as possible to him, if that makes any sense at all. This was probably the ragiest boss fight for me, and it took me a few hours to finally get a run where I was out damaging him at every stage. And even then, it was still a close fight. It was the final stretch. I used up all the berries in the arena, so it was my last health bar. He had like 10% health left, and his parts were sparking. Then, he started doing the animations that were best case scenario. He was invisible, but he would just land, I would get a hit in, he would fly up, hover, land, and I would get in another hit. He does a charge that I've seen before, I dodge, but I get stuck on a tree stump or something, and he hits me. I use a potion that I forgot about, and now I'm nervous. I go in for a risky hit, I get punished, and so does Alva, who's now knocked out. He does a little taunt, I fall for it, and get punished again. Now I'm at peak clench. He tries to hit me with everything in his arsenal, but I'm dodging all of it. Then I'm rewarded with the best case scenario again. His health is so low at this point, so I risk it for the biscuit and pay for the consequences. I'm shaking. He lands, I go for a hit, and I miss. He lands again, I fully dedicate, and then there's an explosion. My health is 25, but I beat him, but my health is 25. Remember that underrated skill that decreases the damage I take when I'm critical health? If not for this skill, I think I would have died at the very end and I would have cracked my keyboard. I was so happy and grateful. I downloaded Demeter with a smile on my face, told Ava that she was now my best friend for life, and turned Gaia into an earthbender. It was now time to get Hephaestus. But first, I bought a better melee outfit, took some hot pics, and even slayed a fire bear to prove how hot I was. No one was safe from this heat. No Loch Ness monsters, no Grimhorns, but despite it all, I was still an alpha, not an omega. I needed omega clearance to get Hephaestus, and apparently I can get that at a tomb near Alva's hometown. So I set sail to see my girl again. Instead, I ran into this guy with such a superiority complex that his name was CEO. But despite his ego, he still couldn't do jack against the notorious Thunderjaw guarding the tomb. The only annoying things about him is how his legs stun you just for touching them, and how he nukes himself to get you off of him. But otherwise, his moves were pretty easy to dodge. After learning his moveset and applying constant pressure, victory was in sight. But then I got too greedy, paid the price, rolled, charged, missed, and got nuked. He had like 0.5 HP left or something. I got up, took a dump, and absolutely rolled him when I came back. I was victorious. We entered the tomb, and CEO started giving a speech that no one asked for. However, we learned that CEO was a clone of the CEO who built this tomb. That explains why he's such a douchebag. I didn't mind too much though, until he forced me to cosplay as a fellow CEO. Then I wanted to kill him, but unfortunately I needed him to get deeper into the tomb. Eventually, I got Omega clearance and CEO met Ted Farrow, his original, who was somehow still alive and was apparently so putrid that CEO said,
Burn it to ash.
Yikes. I couldn't even feel bad, cause that's what he gets for having such a big head. Me and Alva got out of there, I asked her to move into my place, and I went over the plan with Gaia again. Beta was crucial to this plan, but she was so afraid of failing and being crammed into an Amazon box again that she refused to go.
We have the same genes, the same mind, the same heart. So why can't you find the strength to do what has to be done? Like Elizabeth would. Don't you think I've thought about that? I don't know what piece of Elizabeth I'm missing. I don't know what you have that I don't.
And that's when it hit me. An origin story. I had an origin story. I was an outcast, my stepfather died, I was orphaned, and because of all these hardships, I grew up to become one hell of a woman. It was stupid of me to think that the inside of an Amazon box would provide her with the same opportunities. So I promised her that if God forbid she got captured again, I would critical strike her myself.
I'll go.
Now that we were all on the same page, we rolled out like Autobots and split up so each of us could do our part. Everyone was in position, Beta activated Omega clearance, but Hephaestus wasn't going out without a fight. Wave after wave of machines came at me, but every single one of them received the unbridled force of my spear. I overrode multiple network links, but then Hephaestus threw out his secret weapon. A slaughter spine. I wasted no time cracking his toes. I activated my Valor Surge and banged him up real good. The only thing about him was his barrage of plasma attacks, but if you can dodge all of those, you're pretty much good to go. I plasma jumped my way back to Beta so we could perform the synchronized dance that we've been practicing. It was beautiful, but I think we attracted the wrong crowd cause the Zeniths arrived, gave Varl a boo-boo, and yoinked Beta. Like I promised, I was going to shoot Beta to spare her the torture, but that would fail the spear-only challenge, so I didn't. The look on her face made my spaghetti go crazy. And then this random woman flashed me. I told her that if she wanted to do that, she would have to take me out on a date first. So she did. Just when I thought the surprises were over, she showed me Beta and I promised to save her. Nothing would get in my way. I took out a Thunderjaw just for fun. I maxed out my Valor Surge so that power attacks would knock down targets. Zoe even told me that she was pregnant with Varl's child, so now there's gonna be another kid growing up without a father. Things are getting bonkers, guys. Like, I can literally fly now and hack tall necks. I went back to the Froot Loops to clean up some loose ends, and I was owning the leader of the rival gang. There was even a part of the fight where I was forced to use my bow, but I used these throwable spikes instead. According to Google, a spear is a weapon with a long shaft and a pointed tip, typically of metal, used for thrusting or throwing. I repeat, throwing. Throwable spikes, throwable spears, tomato tomato. She got so tired of my spears that she threw one of her own, and then we did things face to face. Of course, she stood no chance. She expected death, but I didn't grant her even that. I forced her to fight alongside me to save Beta and the Earth. Even Silence had no choice but to join me.
But if you ever betray me again, I will kill you no matter what the circumstance.
I flew to the rendezvous point and used Hephaestus to 3D print an army of slaughter spines to fight the Zeniths and their specters. The Zeniths started attacking us, but remember that frisbee that deactivated the shield of my Snow Angel partner? Good thing I took a piece of it, cause now the Zeniths weren't so tough. We charged at them like the frickin' Avengers. We have Fat Thor, Captain Marvel, Black Panther, and Kate Bishop. I caught up to Eric and he couldn't do anything to stop me from avenging Varl. Zoe stole my kill, but it's okay, cause it'll help with her child's character development. After some climbing, I was able to free Beta from her restraints, and she explained to me how the new COVID variant actually came from another planet and followed the Zeniths to Earth. Yo, I'm telling you guys, this is bananas. Then, Captain Marvel over here says that she wants this thing to destroy Earth so the Zeniths could take over. This woman's been watching way too much Gundam, cause she turned into a tentacle version of it with the swiftness. I ran at her, then got absolutely demolished. But that was probably her most dangerous move. As long as you learn her moveset and give her no space to breathe, you'll learn that she's actually pretty straightforward. It was almost like she was built for a spear-only challenge, because whenever I tried to run away and find some medicinal berries, she would whip out all of these crazy laser moves. But close range, she wasn't that bad. Plus, with my maxed out Valor Surge, I could knock her down with power attacks and get some critical strikes on her. Eventually, she would fall and I would steal her alien PC parts. It was finally over. I got my sister back, Earth was saved, and if anything happens, Gaia is there to protect us all. If there's one thing I learned from this journey, it's that unless someone forces a turret in my hands, there's nothing me and my spear can't do. I'll never be afraid again.
Because for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm not alone.